This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Correll. I am here with my partner in empowerment, Jan Jeremias. We have a ball talking each week, and we never know exactly where we're going to go. And sometimes we don't know where we are, but we always seem to wrap it up somewhere about an hour or so. We're also very blessed today to have our dear friend Wendy Corner back with us again. And Wendy is an international traveler who I'm getting to know a little bit better. She has an amazing, well, I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself. But at the moment, she's down doing that god-awful job of staying at a resort in Puerto Vallarta, the poor thing.
It's not a resort. It may be a resort town, but I'm in the local Spanish area.
Yeah.
Oh, seriously. Nobody around here speaks English. I have to get my Spanglish a lot better.
Good for you. I bet you with your accent and everything, that's probably a hoot.
Yes, frankly. Google Translate has been my friend, and I realized how much I was being lazy as a result of it. So this year, I have signed up to Duolingo. Other language apps are available. Just checking on the
there are a few, yeah. There's Babbel and a couple of others too, I think.
JumpSpeak has been doing an awful lot of advertising recently. But anyway, so I'm now on my streak and learning some interesting words. So I went down the street to the local produce stand a couple of days ago, and they asked me how I was, and I went, muy ocupada. And he looked at me and went, wow, she knows something other than hello, how are you? Yay!
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it as long as you're not getting into dangerous areas, you're probably going to be okay. But are you to the point where people don't comment about your accent yet, or they kind of smile at you when you speak, or
they just look at me and go, well, obviously a tourist.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly look local.
I like it.
Yeah, but so I have a sweet story. So my friend who's from Ohio. So my friend she's 5'10" and blonde, and she happens to speak fluent Mandarin. And she went to Columbia. She did a lot of work with Chinese art, and then actually lived in China for a good number of years, like a few years. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, when her son, because she is 5'10" and blonde, and her husband is Caucasian and dark hair, but still, when her son went to school, first of all, he told all the teachers that she was Chinese because she spoke Chinese. So it was very funny because they all looked at her and whatever. But her test was, she still does do a lot of work in Asia. So her test
Mhm.
for herself was, she said it's one thing to speak the language in conversational language. But she went and not too long ago, was her um like her goal for the year was she had to give a lecture for like 1,000 people, and that she was going to do it. She usually went with a translator anyway,
Yeah.
and that she was going to go and do it herself and without a translator. And so she went and she did the lecture on her own, without having
Oh,
to use a translator, which is like another language level of language. When you're
yes.
that like comfortable or proficient,
Mm.
that you move into the technical world, let's say,
Mm.
where you're talking technical stuff or very complex words regarding, and not just conversational of like, how are you, and I need some
Mm.
vegetables, kind of thing, if you're talking produce.
Well,
We
actually, do you know that in and of itself would have taken a shift for her
yeah.
because she's used to delivering a couple of a sentence or two, letting the translator do their bit, coming back to her. And so the fact that her probably hour and 10 was now concertina down to 45 because she didn't have to wait for the translator, that would have taken a little bit of extra effort on her part as well. Hmm.
I
See,
mean, her kids.
in my experience, the neat thing about that part is most of the time, if you got somebody who's reasonably fluent in your language, they can explain it as well or better than a translator could in that situation. They're
Yeah.
in the class, and you just say to them, "How would you say?" And the next thing you know, everybody's laughing, and you're back on track again.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
neat. She was
But
Chinese and 5'10" and blonde. I like it.
yeah, but she also, like, her kids, like, her husband had lived in Germany, so her kids he spoke German to them, and she spoke Chinese to her kids. So they, grew up speaking basically 3 languages. So she
Mhm.
knew enough, like, and she taught Chinese, so in the US, so she knew enough, like, let's say, like we take Spanish in school or whatever language we take. She knew enough and was a good enough teacher, or let's say efficient or eloquent, I'm not, the words escaping me at the moment. English is now
Proficient?
proficient. Thank you. English is now my second language. And um, so she was able to do that well enough. But to me, there is that other level of being so
Mm.
proficient in a language that you can go out and, if it was be the equivalent of me going and giving a lecture on science in Hebrew, when I
Mm.
read Hebrew and speak quite a bit of Hebrew, but that's a totally different level.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Well, my
You
niece works with a company who are based in Italy. She worked for them when she was in Italy. She's now back in the UK, and she is their social media person. And she runs a podcast in Italian.
Wow.
And you go, yeah, that kid's good.
So I was going to
Mhm.
say, you do know how to say, how do you say in Hebrew, right?
Go ahead.
No, I don't. But if you're
Well,
going
yeah.
to
Yeah, I mean, I can speak more than that, yes, but
good.
in Israel, it's always very funny because if you ask for directions or whatever, they always tell you to go, it's down there, it's down there. And so the big thing is like, where is it? Yasha, yashar. You just go, keep going, keep going.
Back in 2008, we made our first of what was supposed to be 3 pilgrimage to Europe. The first one, we went to a resort outside of Paris, right near Disneyland Paris, which had just had its name changed from Euro Disney to Disneyland Paris. Just that
Mhm.
funny little thing that Parisians and French people thought it was okay to go. But when it was Disneyland Paris, when it was Euro Disney, it was like, no, I don't think so. I really don't think so. But the neat part of it is I had 5 years, actually 7 years, from seventh grade um, into college of speaking French and taking French, right? So when I got there, I was pretty good with the basics. I could order our food and ask for the l'addition and that sort of thing. But my brother-in-law, neat guy, truck driver. And he was trying to make a joke because everywhere we went, they would say something to him. Even if they said it in English, he would go, see. And he'd get these scowls, like, and I was, I kind of like grab his hand and go, hey, Raymond, you really, you put him off if you're not at least even trying, or just speak your own language and let them sort that, okay? And so I picked it up in French, and I went back to her and I tried to tell her what he was saying, and he said, Monsieur, so appreciative that you will even try, and that's all we look for is someone to at least give the effort.
Yeah. I remember driving down through France many years ago, and we had a system. Jeff would fill up at the petrol station and I would go and pay, partly because my French was better than his, but we were driving a British car, so it was clearly obvious that we were not local. Right. The steering wheel's on the other side of the road, other side of the cabin, and all of that jazz. So anyway, this is rural France where they don't speak English, and if they did, they'd make a point of not speaking English, So I'm going in there, and she's looking at me, and I'm big smiles, and she's looking outside at this British registered car, and she's apologizing that she didn't speak English. And I, in my bestest French from school days, which was an awfully long time ago, I apologized because it had been, I think at that time.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. When you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself, talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
15 years since I learnt French at school, and she looked at me and went, oh, because that is actually a particular construction, as you'll remember, Bill, that is not a regular construction. And when I was telling my brother this, he went, golly, you remember that? Well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we had a laugh about not knowing each other's languages and still managing to get through. Yes.
Well, see, that's one of the cool things about travel, where there's the adventure of just saying hi to somebody, or the urgency of asking where où est le WC, that sort of thing. And, salle de bain or the el baño.
Baños.
Yeah, you got to know these things. Vamos.
Oh, yes.
That's right. But I think it's also interesting, not only that, but if you work with people who are from another country. So let's say you're not traveling. When I was in the director of the lab, we had 4 different Spanish speaking people from 4 different countries. So we had a guy who was from Cuba, this guy Pedro, Dr. Spando, who was from Madrid. Patty was from Buenos Aires, from South America. And then, I had this other woman who was from Colombia. And just the differences between them, like they would use words because Pedro was from Madrid, Spanish, like very proper Spanish. And like certain words, like he would like turn around, like, what, you just said that kind of thing, because he said, you don't use those words. Like the certain words are not used in Spain. And it was just interesting. I know enough Spanish because I took Spanish in school, and my great aunt lived in Argentina, and she didn't speak any English. She spoke German and Spanish. So when she would come, She would speak to my mother in German, and she would speak to me in Spanish. So, but there was enough differences, which I don't think we realized. We kind of lump a language together. Like we
Mhm.
think all Spanish speakers like sort of speak in some ways. I think some people do anyway. Or maybe I always did until that experience. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, between accent and nuances, there's so many differences.
Kind of
Well,
like
just
us.
look at English.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
We've always been called two nations separated by a common language.
Exactly. And then I've experienced the Australian version, the Asian version, and they are quite different.
Yep.
Can I just ask a quick question? Can you hear the music that's going on at my end?
Very faint in the background, and not when, mostly when you're not speaking, but
Right.
otherwise it's working just fine.
Okay, good. Because we've got some fiesta going on right now, and if it's going to be intrusive, I can go and shut the window.
Oh no, ask them to come on in.
Oh no. I think we might be about to have. The other night we had a dusk till dawn party going on.
Three Kings Day, is that where we are?
Pardon?
Is it Three Kings Day? Is that where we
Oh, no,
are?
no, we got past that. That was the 6th of January. Yeah. No, this was last week. So this literally banging party was going on. So I'm lying in my bed and awake every few minutes because of the noise. And then I woke up around about 2:30 and just thought, oh, well, the party's still going. What I then discovered in the morning was there had been a 6.2 quake in the next door state.
Oh Lord.
And what had happened was I had woken up with a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, because I'd never experienced one before, I just put it down to the banging party because it didn't last long.
They are off-putting, that's for sure. And especially if you're only feeling the ground move a little bit and there's not much shaking, around you, glassware and that sort of thing. We've been through about 4 or 5 of them in different parts of the country, including here in Connecticut.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a neat thing. So back to traveling with language and being around folks who you would think on the face of it you could understand. But I can tell you, I've been in different parts of Appalachia and also in the backwoods Cajun people in the bayou, down outside of New Orleans. And I don't know what the heck they were talking about. I pick up a word here and there, but all the rest of it was just local dialect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, have you been to Glasgow?
I've not, and I can't wait to go. It's on my bucket list.
I think I mentioned that I remember sitting on the underground in Glasgow, and this mother was talking to her son, and I'm sitting there going, I know they're speaking English, but I don't understand a word they're saying.
Yep. Yeah, we had some Scots, that lived in. I was president of 2 HOAs down in Florida, homeowners associations, where we all had bought vacation homes, and we had some folks that were from a lot that were from the UK. As a matter of fact, one of the bigger places was built for to sell directly to UK expats, and most of the people who lived there were. But we had some Scots also, and some Irish, and the Scots would get together. And I don't know what they were talking about. I really don't. I mean, we'd go out to a pub, for a pint, as the Brits would say, and then the Scots would show up and they'd say, "Put that away. Hand me the Scotch."
Oh yeah, good stuff. Actually, did either of you ever see that film Train Spotting? I think it was back in the 90s.
I don't think I have. It sounds
Right.
interesting.
It was basically a very dark film about drug use, and it was based in Edinburgh. And you don't generally think of Edinburgh as having had a really strong accent. I mean, everybody knows Glasgow is legendary, but the whole film was subtitled because there were an awful lot of it was a particularly rough area in Edinburgh, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And rather than the very quaint and the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, it was very strong. And so the subtitles were needed. But at that point, people went, I didn't know that Scottish could be so hard to understand. And you go, yeah, who have you heard?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I find that in the States, if I'm watching a movie sometimes and you can, like, if I'm watching it, I can turn on the subtitles, just
Hmm.
the English titles as it goes by. And, somebody will say something, especially if it's like from the South.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if I'm not concentrating, I'm just like, what did they say?
Yeah.
And then I'll have to repeat it. And every now and then I have to look, like I'll turn on the subtitles just so I can get just be I mean, I know the gist and I know what's happening, but it kind of
Yeah.
bothers me that I can't understand it. So I'm like, what words did they use? What were they saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of our pre watching setup protocol. We have a streaming box that we can find if it's out there and it's streaming anywhere in the universe. We can get it. Okay, and so most of the time we're gonna fire some stuff up. If it's 4K, that's really cool, but those usually come through very dark. So we go to the 1080s, and in the 1080s we keep searching until we get one that actually has closed captions, right? Uh, and That's my wife started doing that during COVID. So this
Hmm.
goes back to when we were watching a lot of TV. I don't remember us watching too many shows, but 100% of what we watch, television shows, movies, we all put on the closed captions if they got it.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the shows we're watching right now, as a matter of fact, is called the Newsreader, and it's an Aussie production. It's
Hmm.
about a news station uh, in the 1980s, and it kind of chronicles how they covered stories worldwide and all that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
there's also an Irishman who's on that too. So we really would be struggling if we did not have closed captioning. It just wouldn't work.
Yes. Well, I mean, my when I was living in Perth, the family I lived above, their daughter married a guy from Cork. I
Yes.
love him. I still need to say, can I get the subtitles on that one, please? And I know his accent very well, but yeah, nice one.
Davy Walls was on my board at the Hampton Lakes, and he was from Cork.
And
And
I
he had
think the
worked for Pfizer for 35 years.
Right.
and I
Got to
think
be
the
able
other
to be understood there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jan.
no, no. I think the other thing that happens if you are in a country, let's say you are traveling, is I know for me, in my experience with traveling, especially because I'd been to Israel like 11 times. So my Hebrew is good, but it's not that good. So to follow a conversation, I have to really concentrate on what they're saying because otherwise I lose it. And then once
Hmm.
I've lost it, it's kind of like I can't get back in. It's
Yeah.
Right.
kind of like I'm just not there. And then I would space out because it was just like, but it requires an extreme amount of concentration and energy to stay
Yes.
focused the entire time and be able to concentrate and follow what they're saying. Some of it is the speed because they tend to speak very quickly and then all of a sudden you know, you're like translating word for word in your head and they're 10 words ahead.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
some of it is that, but there was that element where I'd find myself in the middle of a conversation and then for a second I would lose my concentration and then it was like done.
Yeah. It is hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard work. It's hard
Well,
work.
I'm going to say
It's effort.
most of the French that we were speaking while we were in France in 2008 had to do with menus. So it gets to be pretty easy. I mean, the short sentence is to ask questions about menu items, or answer questions about how you'd like to have it prepared, or without spice, whatever.
Hmm.
But I can't even imagine what it would have been like just to sit there and have these long conversations that weren't at I don't know, Hertz or at checking in or over at the resort or and,
Hmm.
but it was fun. It was fun to engage people when we could,
Mhm,
and who were cool who loved playing with us.
mhm.
Yeah.
I
Like one of the
remember
things, go
yeah,
on,
go ahead. No, go Wendy, and I'll go after.
go on, Jan.
Oh, no. Sorry. So I remember being in Italy. I was in the Italian Alps at Monte Bianco. So, we went to this really nice restaurant, and so there were, people from Italy and Switzerland and the States. And so the waiter came in, spoke all the languages. And so there he is translating the menu for each person. And he would go like, you know, chicken, kavan, like he would do one item at a time. And then he got to the consomme, and he was so reflexive. He went consomme, 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 consomme. I mean, it was so funny. It was like, we all just cracked up because it was like there he was translating everything, and then there finally came to be one dish where he didn't have to translate anything. It was just like, okay, we now know what we're getting.
Oh, love it. Yeah. There were a couple of things I was thinking of, but I'll come back to the first one in a minute. You were saying about multiple variations. I was in Switzerland one time up a mountain, and there was a little bit of interesting language issues going on between somebody who was from Germany speaking High German and the Swiss German waiter, because the High German thought that his version of German was better than the Swiss German. So there was a little bit of tension there.
He was right. They always are.
As far as I'm concerned, yes. So anyway, the German guy was asking for Hezes Milch, and the waiter was going Hezes Milch. So I jumped in and went Hezes Milch. Mm-hmm. You've got a Brit translating between the two of them. I mean, I know they knew each other very well. They knew exactly what they were saying, but I just thought I'd jump in and do the translation.
Might as well. Can't dance, and it was probably too cold to plow.
Oh, no. This was during the summer. I didn't go in the winter.
Oh, okay. No skiing, huh?
No. Go mountain at the spring meadows. If you go in June, the snows have just receded, and you get the alpine meadows, and they are stunning, absolutely stunning. All these little wild flowers, and the cows have only just gone up to pasture. Yeah. So they're really enjoying all this yummy fresh grass. Ting, 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 ting of the cowbells. Beautiful.
We have the same deal in the Rocky Mountains out in Colorado. The summertime is lovely, going up to Estes Park and up to the Continental Divide, Garden of the Gods, all of that area, and it's really quite remarkable because the air gets so thin up there. But almost everywhere you go, we don't have cows up there, but you do have elk. And you have bighorn sheep, and all that sort of thing. But you're pretty much guaranteed of seeing wildlife on any trip you take up there.
Yeah.
There was one time we were walking, doing a ridge walk, and there was a great big snow field. And it didn't look as though it was particularly safe to go across it, and we didn't have poles with us. We were wearing good boots. So Jeff says, "Come on, let's go down." So we actually bum slid down this snowfield, and it was literally like that. And I happened to look up, and there was this ibex, so big sort of deer type thing with the really big horns, looking down and going, "Well, I wouldn't have done that, and I got cloven feet, sunshine." And he waited until we got down to safety, and it was almost as though, "Right, okay, you're safe now, I'll carry on." And it was just, "Oh, thank you." A bit of a guardian angel at that moment, but
professional spectator. Yeah, nice job.
Yes. But the comment on the way down was, "If we get out of this alive, I'm sorry I suggested doing this. Thank you, dear." We did.
And then you have the choice where sometimes you're in situations where you don't have a choice but to go down.
Yes.
Yeah, I did a helicopter hiking trip in the Northern Cascades, which was amazing. And so we went up this ledge with picks because it was the only way to get up. And we got to the top, and we're wearing helmets and everything, and there's like thunder and lightning. And the guy says to us, "We've got to get down now, like now, because the likelihood of getting struck by lightning at this point is really high."
Yes.
So we had to rappel down. I've never rappelled in my life. Like I was like a fish on a string. I'm going boom, 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 boom. But I mean, I'm here to talk about it. And afterwards, when I went back, it was one of the things that my mom said to me, well, I'm really glad I didn't know about while you were doing it or before kind of thing. But, but it was an amazing experience. But it is like, so all of a sudden you get to that point where you're like, okay, we've got to get back home or we've got to get down because right where we are is not
It's not
safe.
safe.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You were saying about not telling your mother. I drove in America for the first time. So I'm driving a car with a steering wheel on the other side, which is not something I'm used to. And it's an automatic, which on the one hand is good because I don't need to think about, no, this is a hand for changing gears. But anyway, I'm coming off a freeway, going up onto the off ramp, and I had to turn left. So I did. Straight left. And there we are on the bridge over the freeway with lights to allow for the traffic. And there in front of me are three huge juggernauts, three massive great trucks. And they're all flashing their lights at me. And I'm going, I know I should be on that.
The other side.
So as soon as the lights changed, they went. So yes, I did. I moved rather rapidly. I did not tell my mother until I had actually left the States, got back to the UK, and then, Mum, you'll never guess what happened.
Exactly.
Well, depending on where you were, if your windows were down, you might have learned some new English terms as a result of that.
I can lip read reasonably well. That was enough. Even at a distance.
Right.
No permanent scars then, huh?
No. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. Have I driven a left-hand drive car since? No. So I would need to be careful.
Yeah.
I think you need to be careful driving anyway.
Well, true.
I mean, it's probably a good thing. But good on you for taking it on and getting through that situation. And in case we've kind of given our listeners the slip, we're still talking about empowerment, and we're coming at it from the standpoint of what kind of ordinary daily things can come up for us that are not typically life and death, but maybe a little bit of a challenge, and how do we bring ourselves up to the level of the task that is at hand, even if it's just trying to figure out how to complete a podcast while you've got a festival going on outside your window. So I think the neat part of it is that there's always an opportunity to generate empowerment, and it's not something you're going to find. It's either something you're going to make a decision and cause to happen for yourself or for another person. But see, it's a shared phenomenon. Empowerment is not something that you can hand to somebody and they get it. Like transformation is something you can just hand to somebody, and that's what it is. Communication isn't something where you just say the words and they automatically know what you're talking about. So empowerment is like that, where you're going to have to take a minute or two sometimes to distinguish, as Jan loves to say, what is it that you need right now? Is it a hug? Is it a shoulder? Do you need to cry? Do you need to laugh? And the neat part of it is that there's always this really cool opportunity to develop, a spontaneous relationship with a total stranger in a foreign, strange land. Yeah. And that makes life worth getting out of bed sometimes, doesn't it?
Yes.
One of the things you just said, Bill, that I just really liked is, you can go out and not in a negative way, but you could consider every person you meet as if they're coming in from a foreign land, not in a bad way, but just in this idea of when you go to a foreign country, there is this curiosity that's about people and about what you're seeing. There's this element of like, oh, wow, kind of feeling this awe that, this is how the person expresses themselves, or this is how people dress here. And could we go out in the world with this idea, not in a negative way, but this curiosity with this kind of background of how do I get to know this person and learn about them and what makes them like what's important to them and what makes them tick and all these different things, because I think we come across like we move through our day thinking everybody's the same. Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like, even though we're not, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like people are all lumped together in a way,
Mhm.
as opposed to differentiating and just realizing that each person is an individual.
Yeah.
And so that whole idea of a foreign country, I've often felt like that. I used to enter my family functions like that, feeling like I was foreign in a foreign country. So I'm used to it. But could I encounter other relationships or other circumstances just with that element of, fresh and newness?
Yeah, I love the curiosity that you're talking about. Like that, why not make a game out of it? You know, if you really want to enjoy life, gamify it. Find ways to just make up rules where you are and see who will play.
One of the things I do on my morning walk is see how many people I can say hello to and who respond,
Hmm.
particularly as the obvious tourist. And because I'm not in a tourist area, when I go out for a morning walk, people are on their way to work or they're on their way to school or on their way to something. And a lot of people will greet me first, which is lovely. But then there are some
Yes.
people who are, and I just go, buenos dias. And done in that light tone, they go, oh, there's somebody there. There's a gentleman who often sits outside his house having a cigarette. He's obviously been put out with the wife, and he's looking a bit downcast. And a couple of times I've gone past him and just looked around and gone, "Buenos dias," and he's looked up. Oh, somebody's seen me, and that is what I think is really precious about what you were saying, Jan. That who can you engage with, and show them that you've seen them.
I had when I lived in Manhattan and I lived on the Upper West Side, there was a guy who was homeless who lived in um, you know, one of the doorways of two stores. And I mean, I would go by every day, say hello to him. He would talk to me. Nice guy. Didn't want to go to a shelter because of safety reasons. Didn't think it was safe. And got to know him, knew his name. I would bring him coffee and stuff sometimes or other things. And it was just like, I think it was so unique because I looked at him as a person.
Yes.
I didn't choose to ignore him or just pretend he wasn't there because it was hard to look at. And it was hard to look at
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. You don't like to see somebody in that place. Um, but super nice guy, really, articulate and everything, and just was down on his luck or for whatever reason. Um, just was living on the streets. And I was just like, hey, he's a human being.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's remarkable the things that we bring into existence just by acknowledging that they're there.
Hmm.
And one of the neat things to do, I don't know if you do this or not, is to kind of play a game with yourself to notice something you've never seen before, even though you've done this many times. Somewhere along the way, to see something intentionally, look for something new that's going to make that trip worthwhile. And whether you find something new or you don't, it's the game that matters. The
Mhm.
winning and the losing is all in your perspective. But since it's a personal game, why not grant yourself a little bit of peace? And you don't have to win all the time.
No,
I used
Yeah, exactly. I know that was very, very un-Brit to say, but
I used to intentionally like reverse directions on my walks and stuff
yeah,
Mhm.
just to get like a different perspective. The way the
Yes.
light would shine would be different. And so I would see different things or the shadows would be different. Or if I
Mm.
was taking a hike, I would go the opposite way so that it wasn't always the same. And
Yeah.
so, and it's always really interesting that when all of a sudden, like I was walking with a friend of mine last week, not too far from home, and we're walking along this very like sort of rapid brook. And all of a sudden we look by, and it's a paved walk, but all of a sudden we look up and there's like this stone wall on one side. And she turns to me and says, has that always been there? You know, but how often we kind of don't even notice what's there. And then all of a sudden you walk one day and you're like, did they just build that? Or is that tree new? and I never saw it before. But it's how non-present we are when we do things.
Yeah.
And then can we find, like you said, Bill, like gamify it? Can I see something new? Um, can I notice something? And it could be the smallest thing, you
Right.
know. And sometimes it's easier to do that than others. Like if it's a different season, then all of a sudden, you notice, like you guys were talking about, like the flowers, or you notice the different animals. But sometimes it's not as obvious depending on what's happening. But can you kind of focus yourself enough or direct your attention enough that you can notice the nuances?
That, exactly. When you think about how people perceive on a daily basis, as you said, going by the same tree 40, 50, 100 times, and now all of a sudden noticing it for the first time. It's almost like you had to change to a different radio station, in order to pick that wavelength up. So getting some depth and some mastery in terms of tuning and really allowing different sort of stimulus, to be noticeable, where most of our adult life is being taught how to keep noise off in the distance where it's not going to be in our way. However, the spice is in the noise, If you don't have noise in your life, I think you either are, in a straitjacket and may have had some, some drugs or whatever, but you really do want to have those things that would normally be annoyances turn into, oh, isn't that great? Look at that. Holy moly.
Interesting that you use the word noise, because I was thinking a lot of what we've spoken about, quite a bit of it is visual, and starting to move into the sound realm, where when you're walking, the sounds that you hear, and maybe it's the birds, or maybe it's the traffic or a horn, but it's starting to move it into the other senses. I mean, maybe it's how your feet touch the pavement and the sound that makes, like something like that, whether you're walking on like gravel or rocks, or you're walking on a trail, or on the road. But it's that feeling of, can you start to involve all your senses in that? Then it becomes that's even more of a complex game.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, I was out walking and I heard this sort of clicking, ticky sound, and I thought, I think that's a hummingbird. I'm looking all around, and I'm actually in an urban area, but it carried on. So I looked straight up, and there on the power line was this little orangey brown hummingbird ticking away at me. I was right. Hello. So yeah, it was really lovely to see. So yeah, but yes, it was the sound that alerted me to the fact that he was there.
Did it understand your accent?
No. Oh. It's a bit like yesterday. One of the bits that I walk on, there's an enclosure with a couple of horses in. And the beginning of the week, one of the horses who I'd kind of made friends with was lying on its side, and its breathing, I would think it's a her. Her breathing was stop. And I'm going, oh dear. If that was a human, I'd say she was chain stoking. She's on her way out.
Oh, no.
So I kind of prayed for her and said, look, if you're going out, go quickly, girl. Just off you go. And off I went, because I thought, I can't watch this. So the following day I go round, same route, and blow me down. She's on her feet, other side of the enclosure. She takes one look at me and that comes trotting over. You crap. I was really quite overwhelmed with how good she looked.
Yeah.
And she straight away put her head round so that I could scratch behind her ear, and then she moved a little bit further so I could scratch down her back. And I felt so blessed to have seen the transformation in her.
Yeah.
And then I looked down at my feet, and there was a plant. I'd seen this plant before, but that was a plant that my father propagated as a house plant, and he was so chuffed with himself. It's growing as an outside plant here. And I had a moment. Now, probably because I was quite taken up in the moment of the fact that this horse was fine and recognized me and wanted to come and say hello, and here I am, and yes. And the fact that I'd got my dad down there as well. And it was a bit of a moment.
It's a great moment. Thank you for sharing it with us. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
And I'm
beautiful.
glad to hear the horse made out okay.
Yes. And I went round again yesterday, and there she was. She was on the other side of the paddock, came trotting over, and again, want to scratch, want to scratch. So that was really precious that we've been back a couple of times since, and I'm going to miss her next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Wendy, one of these days that you've got left to go around and see her, maybe you might inquire what the dickens that was that she was doing that other day when you thought she was leaving.
Oh, she doesn't
And-
speak English, but we got the gist of the fact that I think she was actually I perceived that she knew I was praying for her.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah. And I would be curious to like if you could like almost like get from her energy, like what she did, like not only like what brought her back, like what was, what was ailing her and what kind of renewed her vibrancy or kind of called her back
Yeah.
would be really interesting. And maybe it was your interest in her, your especially your energy being sent to her was that draw that kind of kept her on this, in her physical body.
Yeah.
You
Because
just-
the other horse in the enclosure just completely ignores me. That's fine. Okay. Not you. Fair enough.
you never know when that's going to happen with people as well. And one of the neatest things that you can possibly do is to just grant somebody being by noticing them for a moment. You don't even have to necessarily engage them, but I was touched one time that I happened to be out with some friends having a very formal dinner at a beautiful place. And there was this man who was sitting at the table next to us all by himself. And so I invited him over to, I said, what's going on for you? How are you? A nice looking man, well dressed, he looked like he was somebody who would have been quite comfortable with our group. So I invited him to come over and he said, yeah, he said, I'll take you up on that. And so he sat there for a while, mostly listening, and we're continuing with our banter and telling jokes and, just more or less having some good time and some cocktails. And finally he said, I really appreciate that you reached out to me. And I said, well, of course, and he said, I came here so that I could get drunk and so that I could go out and I could put a pipe from my exhaust into the inside of my car. And I'm not going to do that now. And I thought, good Lord, I'm so glad that we were here and that we noticed that you were there and that you came and sat with us. I'll go further. Here's my business card. I want you to call me anytime you ever have bad thoughts like that again. Because I care, and I know you've got people who think that the world's better because you're here. So just, happenstance and could have knocked me over with a feather, for him to come out with that. So finally he left and the rest of us just sat there going, I don't know, how do we top that?
Yeah. Right.
Right place, right time, all that sort of thing. Or maybe the guy was, a storyteller. You never know. But the point was just something was made difference. A difference was made just by having a quick smiling conversation with a total stranger.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously I do that a lot, and that situation made me want to do it a lot more.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you gave the horse a reason to live.
Me too.
I would hope so. Yeah. Because the day after when I went back, as I walked around the corner, I'm going, don't want to see this. I was expecting to only see the one, but then, as I said, and she was trotting over to see me. It was very precious, very precious.
Yeah. So
Animals are very interesting in that way because animals don't get trapped in their drama. And so, I've worked with animals for, as you both know, for a long time. And so it's just always interesting to me when I work with them. And then I think sometimes like, I'm not really quite sure what I can do for this animal. Like, this animal's really, and then, like, I'll check in with the person whose pet it is, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're doing so much better," or whatever. And I'm kind of like, what the, part of me is like, what the freak just happened on one level. Like, I'm like, well, what exactly did I do? Like, as I try to like kind of decipher it, like, but then really it doesn't really matter. It
Mhm.
doesn't really matter what I do, but it's just, I see it all the time. And I think some of it is we get trapped in our heads and trapped in, all the all the voices and everything. And they don't. They're very quick to move on and say, "Oh, she's sending me energy and love or healing. Oh, okay, I'll take it." You know, and people are just like, "Oh, okay, I can't, what's that going to do?" Or, they just kind of, I don't know, just push it to the side very quickly. And I think animals are just like, "Okay, they're doing this for my best interest."
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I'll go and see her again tomorrow. I didn't go down this morning. I took a different route.
Please give her our kindest regards.
Yes.
I will. I'll say, Bill and Jan, say hi.
And glad to hear you're up and about.
Yes.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mm.
So we're kind of, in my opinion, having a ball here, just completely engaging each other as new friends.
Mhm.
And I think there's something that's totally wonderful about that in terms of um, where we have intersection. And what I mean by that is where we have um, experiences that are not the same or shared with each other, but we have similar experiences that can be called up in a moment's notice. And I think that's one of the neat things that conversation and communication does, with folks, is that part of how you are building relationship is engaging in examining feelings, that come up for you in different situations and all that. And at the moment, especially when you were talking about how you had to walk away and you didn't know what was going to be, the outcome for that horse.
Mhm.
That's so human, and it happens to all of us at different times, to different levels, almost every single day. And when we talk about the empowerment side of it, you probably walked away and it may have taken you, to something else. You might have had to have somebody smile back at you when you said buenos dias, in order to kind of like calm that down a little bit. But I have a feeling it was in the back of your mind.
I did a shakeout. I had to disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's physically
Yes.
shaking your body.
Yeah. Physical shakeout. And then plus the fact that as I walk further down that street, there are a couple of dogs that literally are on the roof guarding. And they decided to make their presence felt. I went, "Oh, yes, yes, good God, doggies." And that was me. I was out of it.
Good for you. Good for you.
They were very quiet the day after.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure.
Mm.
Animals. I love how we anthropomorphize, and we give them language, like we know what they're saying. My sister is a black belt at that, and taking a behavior by a cat or a dog and then turning it into a long paragraph of communication, where the dog might just be saying, "Ooh, that tasted good," or "Yum, another Scooby snack."
But I think animals are so interesting in that they work off of, tone of voice and things like that. So, Persian, like, when my mom comes to visit and she's staying with me and she can never get over, like, she's always like flabbergasted that I'll say something and Tonka knows exactly what I want. Exactly. And obviously, the words aren't, it's not the words, it's my tone of voice, it's my body language,
Yep.
it's everything else that they're kind of so much more aware of than we are. And so basically you get the same thing with a baby. Like you can read a textbook to a baby with a really, really sweet voice and they like smile,
Yep.
versus, And animals are the same way. It's much more based on tone. And I know that I'm quite tone sensitive like that. I feel like that makes a difference for me, a huge difference sometimes.
Mm.
And I feel like animals are very much the same way.
Yeah. Well, they're picking up on the non-verbals, as you say. It's not the
Right.
actual language, which is why I keep saying to all these animals, I know you don't speak English, but you understand what I'm saying, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's kind of true with people too,
Yes.
and it may not be that they understand precisely, without representational language, words, nouns, and verbs, and that sort of thing. But you got two other, the structural, what's going on, object to object, and then also the immediacy of the emotional, other communications that we use that are silent or may have some sort of a sound to them. So
Mhm.
all of that put together is the whole message. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a neat thing, and that works in terms of being in a situation with strangers in a strange land where you don't have the representational language to work with. You got to get it worked out some other way, right?
Mhm. And then you go into problem solving mode, big style.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made part of it. And I think this has been up for conversation, like discussed a lot. That was one of the things that made the pandemic so challenging, was being behind a mask and not being able to have those visual cues about somebody. Like, we could barely see their eyes,
Mhm.
and you couldn't see, the lower half of their face at all. And you had
Yeah.
no idea what was going on behind the mask, so to speak.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people were not communicating as well. And people's body language was like very protective of, like, okay, well, if I hold myself like this, I'm not going to get sick.
Yeah.
So I think the combination created a distance that we're still dealing with, that people are still kind of trying to navigate, like being around people and being comfortable. And I said, I think especially when rates go up and rates go down, as far
Mhm.
as, infection. And I think that all of a sudden everybody's very quick to kind of revert back into their, not that they shouldn't, but they're very quick to retreat back into their shell or their cocoon where it's safe. And then it's almost like you get out again and you're like, okay, whereas opposed to it was so natural before, now it's like, okay, now I have to reacclimate again to being around people and to being
Mhm.
open. And so I think it's this constant, play between both.
I think you're right. Before COVID hit, we'd been experiencing flu epidemics since the year dot, and people had taken themselves back into home because in those days there was no Benadryl or whatever medication we would throw at it and then push on through. If you had a genuine flu, you were on your bed because you were really feeling crook.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, unwell.
Mhm.
And that, I think but you bounced back. I mean, the flu could take you 2 weeks to get over, and you
Right.
might have the post-viral fatigue. But get a month's time, you were fine, you were back, you were doing what you always had. But I think you're right, Jan, that the prolonged separation from the world, the prolonged separation from physical interaction, and I refuse to call it social distancing, I call it physical distancing, um, because we don't want to be socially isolated. And we need to have that. Even the most introverted of people
Yeah.
needs to have some interaction with the physical body and to feel that energy in the presence of someone. Yeah.
There's a fundamental thing between people and animals, and that is this non-verbal trust. It's a very sacred uh, kind of a equilibrium in which all parties feel equal, and they don't feel threatened, and they don't feel at risk. And the sad part of what happened during COVID is that there were some well-intentioned people, but there were some very bad intentioned people as well who decided to take advantage of the situation to go far further than just suggesting to people how they might stay well. And we were given so many other edicts and commands as to how to behave and what we could and couldn't do with people. And I really think that agreeing with you, that's a trauma, from in a culture worldwide at this point as well.
Yes.
I've talked to people all over not like you, Wendy, but I mean, I've got a few friends, in Africa, and I know some people in Africa where they had very low incidence of COVID, altogether, virtually no deaths, and other parts of the world where, everything was clamped down and kids were kept out of school. There were horrible statistics as a result of whatever that was. So when we go through a period of time where our rules, the rules of the road, which we by acceptance, that we just sort of agree, non-verbally, but over time, this is a good behavior. And as the Brits would say, it's just not done. You don't
It's
have
not
to.
cricket.
It's not cricket, and it's just not done. You don't have to be told what it is. You only have to be told that this isn't how we do things around here. And all of that kind of got set aside for a little while so that people had to figure out who to trust in terms of where to get their direction of what was appropriate and inappropriate in terms of interacting with other human beings. And so I think we're starting to come out of that a little bit. And at the same time, I also see there are some people that are trying to raise it again. And there's, most of the hospitals in the area now have mask requirements again. They do at the elderly homes. And did we or did we not prove that didn't do a darn thing? So again, I think part of it is a placebo effect, that they're really hoping that this will have a calming effect. And I won't look for any other motive other than that. But then when they come out and say, hey, they've got this brand new, one person died in Arizona, and we're on lockdown in California as a result of it, and Pfizer's got a vaccine for it. It's like,
Really?
Odd that. Funny old thing. So, what it comes down to is that we all have to, in terms of the navigation, we have to pick out our points of light and our lights, the candles that are nearest to us, that we can get some, get some illumination from. And trust. We have to trust. There's no self-expression, there's no growth, there's no opportunity to be joyous human beings without trust. Trust but verify.
Yeah, and I think you also, to me, that whole trust and verify, brings to mind the word personal power, not in a bad way, but personal power and personal responsibility.
Yep.
Like there is this element of, for me, I always looked at it as like, am I taking care of myself? Like, am I doing, based on my decisions? One is, obviously don't want to put anybody else in danger by doing what I do on how I practice or whatever I believe. And then I also want to make sure I'm keeping myself as healthy as possible. And so that's my responsibility. That's no one else's responsibility. That's mine and mine alone, and to think that I can then act, nonchalant and willy-nilly and then expect to go and get outside help, which I'm not saying you don't. If you're sick, you go to the hospital, but to sort of be careless and then go, and yes, you should go, but it's kind of like, you have a personal responsibility to me, to keep yourself as healthy as possible. And partly because, if you're unhealthy, it's a tax on the system. I mean, you're not only affecting yourself, and that's what we saw during, and I'm saying people were willy-nilly, but we know what happened after, mass people got sick, as you look at healthcare and healthcare workers being totally exhausted and depleted and resources being depleted. And so it is at a cost. So I think there's a personal element of responsibility to take care of the best yourself and be the most responsible you can about what you can control.
100%. You've got to be master of your own universe. And that means getting as much positive information as you possibly can about the things that do work, and not just blindly follow a set of prescriptive actions that someone gives you, that may or may not be applicable to your life. It may have nothing to do with you. It's like, I have had people over the last 40 or 50 years tell me that my routine of taking vitamins every single day in my life is just a waste of money. I've had doctors tell me, Bill, you've probably got the most expensive pee of any of my clients, but I tell them, I feel different when I'm taking the vitamins, and it may be a placebo effect, or it may be that it's more healthful for me, but I heal more quickly when I have a wound. I have, I'm more centered, and I sleep better, and all these things. And finally, I don't know, about 20 years ago, I got a new doctor, 25 years ago, and she said, no, you're doing the right thing. And she said, even if all it's doing for you is satisfying your belief, she said, that's the right thing for you to do. And she said, don't ever let anybody talk you out of it, because that's their thing. That's their world. So my beautiful blushing bride makes me up one of these every week. And it's got all of my range of different kinds of vitamins in it, including the ones that I need to keep my macular degeneration at bay. So what's next for you in Mexico, Wendy?
I'm winding up, to be honest. I've got a few podcasts that I need to get recorded and ready to hit the publish button. Oh, and since the last time we spoke, Jan's has gone live. So please do, people, go and watch that.
Oh, sure.
So I've got a few of those podcasts to do. I'm working behind the scenes getting affiliates ready for the Publishing for Good company that I'm setting up with my friend in the UK. So it's a basic package of publishing. We do the formatting, we send it off to Amazon and Ingram Sparks. We give you the ISBNs, and there's some barcodes you can embed in, not barcodes, QR codes that you can embed into the actual thing. For if you want something like book cover design or illustrations or editing or that sort of thing, we have a range of affiliates that we can put you in touch with. So this is what I'm at the moment doing, busy gathering affiliates around that. I'm also cracking on with my own book that has now morphed into 4 books, and working with authors, entrepreneurs who are they've made the promise to themselves, and it could be a number of times, to get from the promise to the page. And so we're working on that as well. So we're getting some big work on that, which is really good fun. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. And then we ship over to Kuala Lumpur on the 27th, arriving on the 29th in time for Chinese New Year.
And to where?
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Kuala Lumpur, of course. Yes. What a great place to be for the Chinese New Year.
I know. I hadn't realized until I'd set myself a date of going, and then I suddenly thought, hang on, it's Chinese New Year. Quick Google search, the day I arrive. Okay, Wendy, get your finger out and get somewhere booked in to stay. And between the 2 days when I thought about it and actually booked, my search had narrowed down to 4 options. So if I hadn't done it then, I probably wouldn't have had a roof over my head to go to. So yeah, I'm there.
Another one of life's little blessings.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And to be there for Chinese New Year is going to be very special.
Yeah. Well, Jan, any thoughts to wrap up? We've had another wonderful conversation.
Well, I'm inspired by Wendy's travel, and just, I think the whole idea of, at this point, not being in my scenario to travel, is to go outside, looking out in the world and meeting people as if, not in a bad way, but I'm in a foreign country and I'm wanting to experience and get curious. So that would be my suggestion to everybody is, go out trying to look for new experiences or live the experiences that you're living, and try to find the newness or the uniqueness of everybody you meet.
I like that.
Love it. Wendy, how about you?
Well, I'm taking up what Jan's saying, and the point you were both making earlier on about really mindfully experiencing your life, engaging all your senses when you go on a walk, when you meet with people, particularly when you're preparing and eating food, because I've certainly done this in the past. I've sat down in front of the computer or watching the TV or something and just mindfully been eating, mindlessly been eating. And you got to the end of it and go, oh, there's nothing left. Where did that go? Was it all right? Actually, it didn't taste too bad. But the point was I didn't particularly savor it, enjoy it, appreciate it. So I think that's something I'm going to take from our conversation today, to be more mindful and engage all of my senses in what I'm doing. So thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And what you can do is you can put reminders on your phone at different parts of the day, reminding you to experiment more with mindfulness. See if you can add more brushstrokes to, how robust and how magnificent the world is just by giving it the joy of your attention.
Yes. Yeah.
Stick your tongue out every once in a while and try to figure out what it tastes like. Careful what you do. If you stick your tongue out every once in a while, and then, just try to see what that tastes like, you'd be very surprised how much more that adds to the experience. You can be skeptical, but I hope you're curious.
Oh, I am. I'm just trying to think, doing it behind the hand, sort of. I'm British. I've been taught not to stick my tongue out.
Well, you've been taught to only stick your tongue out under certain circumstances, right?
Yes.
They have to have been pretty bad. Yeah, I got you.
Or a dentist or a doctor going, Alec.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll tell you what, I've had an amazing Saturday afternoon here talking to these beautiful women all over the world. Now I'm not making this stuff up when I tell you, but the thing of it is that we are just people talking, and we are very interested in empowerment and maybe leaving you with a little something to think about that you can put to work on your own. As Jan says, just go out and experience the life as a novice or a newbie. Just go and take it all in and see what that's like. Let's see if you can move yourself. That's kind of a just really cool thing. But I do have one more request for everyone before we say goodbye. And Jan's been doing it probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but you know what I'm going to say. I want you to get in contact with somebody that you know, like, and trust, or maybe even love, and let them know just how important they are to you in the world. And reach into their lives for a moment, either by text or phone call or email, and just let them know that your life works because they're in it, and that you mean the world to them or to yourself. And you would really want to be called if they ever needed anything at all. I think that's what I've got. We are lighting the candle, a world that works. And thank you all. It was lovely speaking with both of you, Wendy and Jan, and thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you both.
Bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.